It's Real Talk, Episode 1, The Pilot, and I'm your host, Al the Movie Lion. On today's show, from Characters Welcome, comedian and director Justin Tyler scores the Leslie Nielsen 1980 classic Airplane. Writer, director, producer Lakeisha Jackson helps me grade Paul Greengrass's 2006 film United 93. And Syd the Cinema Sloth and I will tally our totals once we talk about the 1997 presidential action flick Air Force One. Now quick, leave a like, subscribe, so we can start the show. Real Talk is powered by Real Digital. If you work for a brand or agency producing content, keep it real by setting up a consultation at www.realdigital.media to see how your next campaign can come in ahead of schedule and under budget. To try and discuss the 1980 film Airplane and not immediately acknowledge its impact on the comedy genre, film business, and popular lexicon is to try and say Shirley around your uncle without getting the response,
"And don't call me Shirley."
Often a pioneer will pay for the sins of their imitators, but 45 years later, Airplane soars above nearly all other slapstick flicks with its dark edge, relevant themes, and an output of jokes per minute that could compete with the best Simpsons seasons. Airplane doesn't just know it's a movie. It loves being a movie, and it makes it clear that it loves lots of other movies too. The film's silliness is matched only by the consistently earnest performances delivered by the cast and sets a tone few of its predecessors have successfully matched. My good friend, comedian, and writer-director Justin Tyler is here to review the picture with me. So let's get his thoughts. Justin, welcome to the jungle, my friend. Thanks for being here.
Hello. Great to be here, Al. Wow. What? You smell good, you look good.
Thank you so much. Well, I can certainly return the favor. We Lions have a very strong sense of smell, and you smell lovely.
This movie is excellent. I like hearing what you're saying about it is so true. This movie, I feel like, it's crazy to, in a time of division, to have something that is still holds up, and I think is universally loved across all uncles and people even younger than that.
Yes, we have our real rubric here that we use on the show. Perhaps a much better rubric, if I'm going to acknowledge one, is the uncle spectrum of where things fall in everyone's uncle meter. And yeah, no, Airplane is just a movie that when I watch it, because I'm curious, when did you see Airplane for the first time, if you don't mind me asking?
I mean, I can't even remember when. I just know it was definitely in my childhood home, in front of the TV. It was probably airing. It's one of those movies that I feel like just when it's on any TV, it just collects people. And because everyone wants to hear their quotes. Everyone wants to hear what's the vector, Victor, and all that. And like their different runs. The plug moment that's now become such a meme. Like it's just such a universal movie. So it was definitely when I was probably in the 10 to 12 range.
Okay.
And I haven't seen it in a long time until prepping for this. But man, I think about a lot the kid couple that meets and falls in love over the coffee. When they're in the beginning, it's when Ted's first on the plane and he's telling the story to the woman next to him, and then it cuts to her hanging. Like, man, that's such a great joke, and it's just a pure visual.
I guess like because that happens pretty early. I mean, I don't think the flight's taken off yet, or the plane's taken off yet, and it's such a great like thesis joke because that tone that it sets of such a funny moment we've all been in where you're just sitting next to someone on a plane and they won't stop asking you questions about how did a lion get on the plane, for example. I don't know. It's interesting to see a movie that's 45 years old that feels like it's maybe a little more brave than a movie you'd see that comes out today.
Yes, I thought about this a lot watching the movie because this movie does two things that comedies just don't or can't do anymore and haven't for a long time. One, it is able to tell jokes and do plot at the same time. There are just jokes mixed with a plot because why not?
Right.
There's no reason why you can't have jokes and a plot. People are smart. Now comedies are like, this is the Apatow effect. It's like, the plot is about this emotionally Arrested Development man, usually, who's trying to be better. Mm-hmm. Not funny. And then all the comedies layered on top of that.
Yeah.
And I just think we're smart enough to be able to do both. That's the kind of comedy I like that can be doing both at the same time. Talking about the lady that Ted's talking to, her first joke is she's being oddly sexual describing
yes,
Elaine.
That's right. Yes.
He's like, oh, what a sweet woman and fine supple breasts. And it's like funny, great. Oh, weird old lady, you wouldn't expect her to say that. being sweet about commenting on the lover's physicality. Great. And then the second joke is she hangs herself because she's bored. Like comedies, it's just like characters get like one thing they do. You get one joke, that's your thing. You come back and you do that. It's very like rote callback. This surprising constantly, and we get runners, sure, where like those kid or like speaking jive, all that stuff.
Right.
We touch on those and they do come back as runners, but this movie is not afraid to just toggle jokes back and forth for the situation, and to be chasing originality all the time. Something that I think is just the best.
Which ends up what is effectively again just a setup and a punchline. Feels like a really layered character, you know.
Yes,
like she's sweet.
It's just jokes though. It's just jokes. There's no, the layering is jokes. It's not anything else.
I really love your point about how those two things can operate simultaneously. You can have an entertaining plot and you can play it out humorously. A moment can be funny for the sake of being funny. It can exist purely there. It doesn't have to be some sort of reflection of an introspective part of the character or something. We can just acknowledge that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar has to be acknowledged as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Like the movie is smart enough to go, yeah, look, there's no way he could just be a pilot. That's almost what.
Yeah. They're doing so many different kinds of jokes. They're doing like slapstick jokes. They're doing like, you know, edgier jokes, sex jokes. They're doing like social commentary jokes. They're just, you know, it's a scattershot, shotgun blast of comedy that I think is hard to pull off, because if any of those start to miss, then you're a little messed up over the course of the comedic flow of the movie. But they just happen to hit so much. The plot is good, but this was also like a parody of a genre of movies at the time that we don't really do as much anymore. So they had the benefit of really being confident in those tentpole plot points, so they could just really let the comedy hang. They had so much structure to hang their comedy on.
If I had to ask you to designate the plot, a score 1 out of 10, what would you be comfortable giving it? And Justin, this is the first score. This is what happens when you're on the pilot episode, talking about the first film, giving the first score.
It's a lot of pressure, especially from a very verbal lion. My own personal Simba talking to me. End of movie Simba. Not like I just came up to King Simba.
Thank you.
To give it a score just for the plot alone, degree of difficulty high. A lot of characters, a lot going on. Comedy and dramatic action, sometimes hard to maintain both. This movie does it very well. Keeping it simple and clean, something we've lost as a film people. Everything is way, way too complex now. So I gotta give this. I'm gonna have to give it a pretty high. I'm gonna give it an 8.
An 8. And just a reminder, because this is the first time out of gate, you can't.
It's not even a reminder. It's just information.
Yes, exactly.
It's the first time. It's a minder. Give us a minder.
You can do half points if you want. So you don't have to do solid.
Never.
I'm locking in 8, but
never half measures.
I love it. That's a confident man.
Yeah.
Well, I would love to hear your confident thoughts on the characters and performances, because my goodness, this movie has a few characters and performances.
It's also a very particular type of comedy that I think playing it straight is necessary. Not ever really, you know, winking or blinking when it comes to like, you can't comment on what you're doing. You can't stop going hard. That's what I mean. Yeah. You can't. Blink would be like, this is too much. Wink is like just to undercut your comedy because you're not feeling maybe confident about it. Something a lot of people do.
Right.
So all of these performers really, I mean, obviously you got Leslie Nielsen, the GOAT, in here of doing this. You know, this is like literally his brand of comedy, and these are his guys. So he's here for it. But just the leads, like Robert Hayes, Julie Haggerty, people that we didn't see, they're not huge celebrities. I would say they're iconic only because of this movie.
I think that's fair.
And they do a great job at playing the trope, the lovers trope, and sort of their jobs in this movie. But as well as playing the comedy in a way that is like so great. Like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is excellent in this.
Oh yeah.
Lloyd Bridges, Robert Stack, all of the serious voiced white men ride in this movie.
They sure do. Well, there is this earnestness to it that you touched on where, you know, in a couple episodes from now, we'll be talking about a movie like Dumb and Dumber. And Dumb and Dumber is a movie where there's silliness going on, but the other characters in the movie know that this is weird. They react to it. In this movie, to your point, the characters don't react to the silly. The silliness
No.
exists. Everyone just moves forward, but there are still shades of earnestness within this. And when you think about Leslie Nielsen and how he can be so silly and funny, but while simultaneously being completely straight laced. And I think Julie Haggerty does a really good job of that too, where she's just can be so innocent, but I don't know, she has a lot of different levels she kind of has to hit without really being able to ever change her tone too much. But she does it
Yeah.
really well.
Yeah. She has to play straight to a lot of different people while also being funny at different points and being the, like you said, the sort of doe-eyed innocent lover character in this. I think it's excellent across the board performance-wise. And it really like doing the job, which I think is now movies now a lot, especially comedies, are so celebrity driven or star driven. To chart this type of movie, this was like the Zucker brothers and these movies were popular for a while with Airplane. A little bit later, they did Hot Shots and Hot Shots Part 2, I think. And then that sort of dies out for a bit. And then you have the glut of like Scary Movie, Teen Movie, all those, which were never as good because they were always, the comedy wasn't as sharp. They weren't aiming to do any of the social commentary stuff that this movie does. It was just pure parody, and those were wildly popular. And then now that's just straight up gone.
Yeah.
We're not doing that at all anymore.
Yeah, I agree. I think you have the sort of big bang of Mel Brooks and his kind of contribution, but that's again, it's just that it's sort of the beginning. But then when Airplane hits, it's sort of like everything is doing Airplane. The Naked Gun series is doing Airplane.
Yeah.
There was a short run in the '90s that Jay Moore kind of dipped his toe in.
Oh, yeah.
Mafia and a few. I mean, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Naked. There is a Naked Gun reboot that's being released this year. I have not seen it yet, so I can't really speak to.
It's really good, and I think it's telling that movie, the comedy community. Well, shouts to Dan Greger and Doug Mand, who I know who wrote that movie, with some other folks, and I think it did well. It's very funny, but I think the comedy community was like, "Go see this, everyone! Hurry! This is what we..." And like that didn't happen back in the day. Right. It was just a good movie or a bad movie or whatever. Now everyone's like rallying around. It's like a movement to get more comedies like Airplane, like this Naked Gun movie, back in theaters and out in the world.
Leave a comment if you've seen the new Naked Gun, and leave a like regardless. What would you give it? What would you rank it?
For performances?
Yes, sir. For characters and performances. It's sort of a blend of the two.
Okay, nice. So there are so many characters too, and so many types of characters that are brought in and roundly made fun of in a great way. I mean, I don't know. I hate to just be pure positive, but I guess I'll go 9.12.
9.12. Whoa, really going back quickly on that.
Oh, is that my undercutting my point from like 10 minutes ago? Interesting.
Oh, speaking of Ernest Whiteman. No, anyway.
Yeah.
The next category is visual storytelling, which it's easy to think about cinematography. That's something definitely worth talking about. But visual storytelling, also, we want to keep in mind the edit here. So it's not just, the images, but how they are sequentially arranged. Also, art department and wardrobe and things like that. So it's all kind of compiled here in visual storytelling, which this movie takes place 95% of it's on a plane.
Tight quarters.
It's limited in what they can achieve, but as we mentioned earlier, with the old woman unaliving herself, they do as much with this plane as I think anybody could do.
Yeah.
I'll ask you, visual storytelling. What were your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think it would probably have to be a little bit lower just for the nature of this isn't particularly a visual movie by design. We do get the big airplane coming into the terminal moment at the beginning of the movie, which is very visual, cool, iconic. There's a lot of iconic stuff that happens in the tower. Like I said, the plug meme is still out there. Physically, it's amazing. Just like not to keep dwelling on this woman killing herself moment. But the way the camera just pans over slowly to reveal her is really like, there's the visual language is good. The slapping sequence, one of my favorites also, very well done. But it is all in service of the joke. So the visual isn't the goal. The visual is just the way to get to your punchline. So I'm going to drop it down to I'll give it a 6 for visual.
A 6, okay. I want to mention the open is a nod to Jaws, and it's pretty funny. It uses sort of the plane as is in place of the shark. I really love the joke when Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is finally drug off because he's, passed out. And the bottom half of him, he's just in his Lakers gear. That I thought was very, very funny.
Yeah, funny.
But the 6 is locked in. That moves us on to use of sound. What were your thoughts on the use of sound?
I mean, it's, again, in service of the joke. It gets by, but I can't really think of a ton of real sound importance here. So I guess I got to give it just an even 5 of, like, getting the job done.
The neutral 5.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, then that finally brings us to talk about theme. And again, this is a funny movie. This is a movie that surprisingly does kind of traverse a lot of different themes, albeit by way of joke. But they do get into a lot in this movie.
Yeah. I mean, they make fun of religion, especially at the beginning, bureaucracy sort of throughout, and the way that we do things in a stupid way. Touch on some race stuff for sure, socioeconomic stuff, like groupthink. Like it touches on a lot of stuff and pokes fun at it, but to aim at that theme, to touch those, there are, like we just talked about with the later parody movies in the 2000s, like they didn't have to do that. They could have done just a pretty straight parody of this type of disaster movie and got through fine. But instead they were aiming higher and wanted to tell a variety of jokes. So I think they're great use of themes and not overdoing it. Because I think something, especially comedies do, modern comedies, it's like, we get it. He needs to grow up. Stop.
Very heavy-handed. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, well done on theme. I'm going to go 9. I'm going to give it top marks.
This is obviously a silly movie, but it kind of offsets that by also just being smart and confident and having things to say. And yeah, you can make a joke for the sake of making a joke, but there's no reason you can't, again, have something behind it. And it's not picking on one group. Everybody gets made fun of. Everything that gets touched on is lampooned. So I don't know. There's something, maybe it's the 90s lion in me, but I do appreciate that sort of, I don't know if cynicism is the right word, but it definitely doesn't take itself too seriously, but it also knows that it has something to say.
Yeah. So I should have commented. You are a 90s lion. That's right. You have the slap bracelet, the puka shell necklace, and the third eye blind tramp stamp. I guess it's still a tramp stamp, even though it's on.
I'm hanging on. I mean, we call it a tail stamp, but yeah.
Nice. That's a little tailspin.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to say about the box office for this, just a question I had. The U.S. and Canadian box office, 83,453,539. The worldwide box office, 83,455,874. So there's like $2,335 there that they pulled in from the rest of the world. Who's watching that? It's like this pop off at an Irish theater.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe there was like a Chinese film festival that thought maybe this
scooped up $2,000 or so.
That's right. That had a good weekend. Or there's a chance that IMDb's credibility is not fully intact.
They haven't counted the receipts correctly. Well, comedies don't translate. Airplanes, they're everywhere.
That's very true.
Certainly the content is there, but I do think that's a problem with modern comedies is people want to make them less because you can't really show them other places.
To run it back, you gave the plot an 8. You gave the characters and performances a 9.12. You gave the visual storytelling a 6, the use of sound a 5, and the theme a 9, which gives us a total of 74.24. Do you want to adjust that at all? You have the opportunity.
I mean, the thing is, it's suffering because of sound and visual, but like, I mean, I love this movie. It's definitely a top comedy, right up there with comedies I love, like The Jerk or Bottle Rocket. So I don't know. Like I don't think the sound's gotten better since we talked about it. So I can't really adjust it. But I wouldn't say it's a C.
Okay. If you were going to give it a letter grade, what would you give it?
Give it an A.
There you go. All right, locked in. So technically a 74.24 adjusted to an A. Here's what I gave it. I gave the plot an 8.5 to your 8. I gave the characters and performances a 9 to your 9.12. As we often are off just by a 12th of a point.
Just skosh.
That's right. The visual storytelling, I gave a 9 to your 6. Now, my argument is I agree. There's probably not a lot of frames that you're going to pause and put on your wall as a piece of art, but I do think all of the cinematography is in service of what it's trying to do. So save for, again, just these really sweeping, beautiful shots. I think it does everything it's supposed to do. I gave it a 9. Sort of the same thing with the use of sound. I gave it an 8, so a little bit for. I don't. Wow. This movie, to me, it doesn't really have a super memorable score. It doesn't necessarily have a memorable sound effect or something that you might associate with other movies. Regardless, I gave it an 8, and the themes I gave an 8 to your 9. So I scored it an 85 to your 74. To me, this is a solid B plus movie. I gave it a B plus to your A, because I do feel like as a genre picture, it is top of its class. It's S tier. Yeah. But if we're just talking about as a film, and we're comparing it to some other things, I feel like a B plus is really fair. But if you give it an A and I give it a B plus, what's that average out to an A minus? So I also feel like, again, we're not too far off here.
No, this is a positive situation. This movie's great. If you haven't seen this movie, it's insane. Go watch it.
No, you have to go see it. Well, Justin, I really appreciate you flying into the jungle here today. Maybe taking an airplane yourself. It's not cheap, but we wanted to make sure we did it right. We put you up. Will you come back? Will you come back and review another film?
Would love to. I love the lion vibe. Thank you for the raw meat to nosh on while I was here.
The least we could do. Well, we'll see you.
Rawr.
Platinum Plastic isn't just a proud sponsor of Real Talk. They're also the home for all our new designs and merchandise. Follow Platinum Plastic on Redbubble by clicking the link in the description and see all our A+ gear. That's Platinum Plastic on Redbubble for all your Real Talk merch.
The quality of any story is largely based on its ability to deliver a satisfying finale. So what do you do when the end of your film is the most well-covered event of the 21st century? If you're Paul Greengrass, you use the best tools the cinematic language can offer to create an incredibly tense, emotional, and intimate 1 hour and 51 minutes that ends the only way it can. United 93 is and always will be a 9/11 movie, but to label it as that and probably put off watching it as a result is to rob yourself of seeing maybe one of the most intense historical thrillers you'll experience. The film immediately lets the audience know who the POV of the story will be told from, which truly allows us to experience the flight from every perspective aboard United 93, and in a way that masterfully builds tension. The film is most successful at showcasing the helplessness all parties involved experienced that morning. United 93 expertly demonstrates how no one was equipped for the events of September 11th, 2001, including the terrorists who weren't prepared for a small group of heroes that used their last hour of life to save countless others. My only criticism of the picture is that I didn't know any of the names of the heroic passengers of the flight going into the film, and I don't know any of their names after. It's been almost a quarter of a century since the events of the film took place, and I do wonder if the impact the characters from the movie had could have been amplified if the passengers, stewards, and pilots' names rolled in the credits before the cast. Acknowledgements aside, United 93 is a fantastic film, and I'm very excited to welcome writer, producer, director Lakeisha Jackson to my Jungle studio to see how she scored the film.
Lakeisha, thank you so much for coming and joining me. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I am excited to be here as well.
Now, I know this is a pretty intense movie. I'm curious, was this your first time seeing it for the show, or had you seen it sometime in the past?
It was my first time watching the film for the show, it was intentional because I just did not want to relive that at all.
It's one of those subjects, and there's a lot of them in cinema where, there's great movies, but it's a difficult subject, whether it's, the Holocaust or something like that. And 9/11 movies have kind of, are obviously going to slowly and over time kind of become their own genre. And I think especially those of us, lions that are maybe a little bit older or were around when 9/11 happened, I think it's always going to be a tough subject. But that said, we break things down here on the show in 5 different categories, and we start with plot, specifically plot. Lakeisha, what did you think about it, especially considering this is, maybe the most famous day in the history of our lives?
Watching it as a filmmaker, and it's so hard for me to watch things and not put that filmmaker spectacle on. I think they did a good job of recounting what happened, the chaos. I felt, and I know it was purposeful, like I was in a jar being shaken and never knowing when things would settle and knowing how this ends, that it's not going to settle well. It was just, for me, I would have much rather gone into this knowing more about the heroes on the plane, having that more interwoven into the plot rather than constant chaos for almost 2 hours to the point where I couldn't breathe sometimes.
Look, it's a really intense movie, and when it takes off, no pun intended, it keeps going. And obviously because of the subject matter, you know what it's about, going on. Unlike most movies, you might not know what's going to happen next. This movie is clearly predictable. I'm curious to get your thoughts. A spoiler alert for listeners. When we start the movie, we actually begin the day with the terrorists. We're in the hotel room with them. And I thought that was a really interesting choice because we, the audience, having lived here in the future, we know what's going to happen. And I think by hanging out with the terrorists, they're the only ones in the movie that know what's going to happen. What were your thoughts on that before I get your score on the plot?
I hated it. I could care less what, and I get why they did it. You got to see their little ritual and that they were preparing, but I didn't want to. They're humans, but I didn't want them humanized in that way. If they had, say, chosen some of the people going to catch their flights, it would have been that much more devastating.
Right.
So in a way, I get why they chose to go there. But if it's going to be from the perspective of everybody, and it seems like every perspective was covered, I would have much rather them mix that with at least some of the people going to work that day to work in the towers. Mix it up a little bit more than to just have us stick with these folks for a good 10 minutes in the beginning. And by the time they make it to the airplane, I'm just praying that why do I have to watch this knowing what's going to happen? I did not like it.
It sounds like you maybe would have got more out of the picture if there was a character you could have been emotionally grounded to throughout the movie and spent more time with, and maybe at the end had a relationship with that you could have kind of mourned and spent time with, as opposed to, like you said, it just kind of builds and builds and builds tension and then it's over.
If, say, we woke up in the morning with the guy who actually got the I think it was American Airlines 11 was the first one they were having issues tracking. If we had started with him, say by the end of this tragedy, we knew what was going to happen. If we maybe took the ride with him, it would have given me something to, because the last frame of this entire thing is the grass coming towards the front of the plane.
Yeah.
I would have rather seen this guy who had a hellish day come home and mourn with his family to give us some sense of something other than just the dread and horror. They probably wanted it to be that way, but I would have much rather have some sort of balance instead of just crying snot bubbles, for like a good hour afterwards. It was intense. And then the thing is, you find yourself wishing that somehow they make it out. We know that's not going to happen. And then I find myself on Reddit through half the movie looking up facts. and not good facts. And I'm like, oh gosh. In the vein of filmmaking, they did their job. They got people talking, although they had, unfortunately, lots of material to pull from.
The reality is the movie is very effective, but what it's effective is doing is putting you in a really traumatic situation. And I really appreciate your point of view that you can acknowledge, like, hey, this was really emotional, but why do I have to relive it in this way? Whereas there is another universe where this movie gives you a character, or the plot rolls out in a way that kind of gives you some sort of emotional relief that obviously, quite frankly, doesn't. I got to get a score from you for the plot, 1 out of 10. Sounds like it might not be on the high side, but I'm curious. What do you score it, Lakeisha?
I would give it a 6.
Honestly, better than I thought you would. So that brings us to characters and performances. This is a movie where I mentioned in my open, you're not going to leave the movie knowing anybody's name, or learning about these passengers. Obviously, there's a lot of information out there. It's hard to truly understand what went on the plane, but I'm just curious, in terms of just the performances, maybe, what were your thoughts on the performances in United 93?
When they would intersperse the flight, it looks like it was going from like the military to the air towers.
Mm-hmm.
At some points, it was almost as if I was watching any sort of war movie where you're going back and forth between. So in those instances, it was a little jarring. I did recognize a lot of actors. I think everybody did a solid job. The real character, the real person in real life who we got the phone calls from when they decided to storm, I wanted to see more from him in the actual film, like more of those calls, more of that action, more of that planning. But as far as if we're just talking performance alone, I think there wasn't anybody that sucked. I think the ones who played the hijackers, though, they did those jobs too well. Like that's a hard road to accept and not to mention deliver on. So
Yeah, that's a weird mental place to have to put yourself in, to go, I got to go to work today and be good at being this guy. That's not an easy day at the office for any performer. And to your point, they do it really, really well. They're very effective. Much like the plot, there's a kind of very specific decision made to present these characters as just normal, everyday people. And at the time, when the film was released in 2006, a lot of these actors not very, very established. You wouldn't have recognized them. I hate to say use the term no name, but they were just not established talent. Whereas a handful. I had the same experience when I'm watching it in 2025. I'm like, oh, I know that person. I've seen that person in this, and a lot of character actors popped up in different things. I think is interesting as a casting choice because it hasn't aged as well as maybe the filmmakers would have intended, because the experience you have in 2006 watching it is very different than the experience you have. Whereas if there was maybe a movie star or something in it, you know that going in, instead of, while I was watching it, I kept thinking, what did I see that person in? Where is that person? Were they in a show I saw? And so that did pull me out a little bit, but everybody does give authentic performances. There actually are quite a few people in the movie who were basically played themselves, were people, air traffic control agents or various military people who are not actors. So it is also impressive to see a movie where you do have trained actors and non-trained actors, and they're all kind of performing in a way that is on balance and on par, which is, I think, a choice probably the director made. Were there any passengers in particular that you really, I mean, I know you mentioned the one gentleman who was communicating on the phone, but was there anybody that you were able to kind of connect with and identify with in the movie?
there were several. The flight attendants. I had a friend who was a flight attendant at the time when this happened. She was an older lady, and just seeing how it impacted her afterwards, because I think she was supposed to be in the air that day but was sick and could not go. But the flight attendants, just thinking about them and their families. And then there was it looks like maybe she was in college and was doing homework on the plane,
Yeah.
and just thinking, because I'm a filmmaker, but I'm also in school and I have a kid, and then to hear people calling home to say goodbye to their kids, and it's just like those performances, and they were really like, I don't recognize them in anything today. They could be in other stuff now, but those really stood out to me, to know that, people were just at the beginning and starting their lives, or and of course the pilot who had an 11-month-old that he, would never get to raise.
It's interesting to hear how even just one character can really resonate with you on a handful of different notes as a mother and a student. Well, let me ask you then, characters and performances combined, 1 out of 10.
I would honestly give everybody a 10. I don't recall one person that I saw that did not believe they were who they were. Like, they had me truly believing every line of dialogue. So yeah, I think they did a outstanding job.
Well, that brings us then to visual storytelling. Paul Greengrass and Barry Ackroyd, who is the director of photography, specifically Paul Greengrass is sort of the godfather of a style, that mid-aughts sort of Born Identity style, and that's definitely present here.
Yeah, like, when I said it was like I was watching some military thing, and I'm like, the Born Supremacy. I love those movies. And it definitely felt like we could have been watching Situation Rooms discuss where Bourne was when he was traipsing about and disappearing all over the world. So it it worked in, the sense of chaos. With respect to the way it ended, we know there's not going to be a satisfactory ending, but to see, everybody fighting in the cockpit, to see that ground getting closer, and then the next thing you see is black and silence, and then words, and then not even the words of the real people, not even the pictures of them, to establish that these were real human beings. And maybe they made that choice because of the hell they had just put us through for 2 hours.
Sure.
To then put a name and face of the real people there might have been too devastating. Maybe that was the reasoning. So I think it was effective as far as directing. I just wish that there was some room to breathe. But in that situation, if he was giving us the perspective that we were, and I think that's what it was meant to be like, we were, having looking at it from like a godlike perspective, watching it, but also when we're on the plane, we're another passenger. We're fighting with them. There is no minute to breathe. There is no reprieve. So I get it in that sense.
Yeah, no, that's a great way of putting it, because that's the most sort of intentional choice that's consistent through the movie. Is you are always a character, whether you're in one of the control towers, or you're on the plane, or you're just anywhere. You always feel like you're one of the passengers, and it's an effective decision, but it does make you question how attractive it can be to multiple views if the intention is to kind of make you relive the intensity of just a horrible situation. So I'm curious, again, you give it its marks, and you note how effective it is, but 1 out of 10, what would you score it sort of overall?
For me, I would give it maybe an 8.
8 is locked in. That brings us to use of sound. We keep using the word intensity over and over again, and I think the sound design in this movie is intense, to say the least. What did you think about sort of the details and the atmosphere that was created?
Nothing really stood out to me. I think visually I was so caught up with what I was seeing. I don't even remember hearing papers rustling as people were frantically running around. The sounds on the plane when they're serving food or walking through, like, it was kind of quieter than what you would think, but the chaos of what you were seeing, at least for me, I guess maybe they didn't choose to do as much chaos in the sound design. But once they decided to storm, those sounds stood out to me. The running up and down, the way they, basically caved in the door to the cockpit to get in, the when the plane would pitch side to side because the one guy was, deciding to crash it because they weren't going to make the target. Like, all of those sounds were really, really powerful, but because of all of that stuff, they could have muffled all of that out and still gotten the same result, I think.
It is largely just sort of atmospheric, the use of sound, but you're right. At the beginning, It's a lot more quiet and almost muted. It almost feels like, the same tools you might use in a horror film within a scene as sort of a jump scare where things kind of get quiet before there's a big move. This is sort of almost like slowed down and zoomed out over the whole movie, where there's this, everything is always atmospheric, but you're right, when it's on the ground, when things are building, it's almost a little too quiet. There's this eerie tension, and then once things take off, there is this almost overwhelming sense of atmosphere kind of shaking you around, a bit turbulent, if you will.
Exactly. There was a scene rather when I think it was American Airlines 11 or either 11 or 75, one of the a possible hijack, and the guy's like, "Oh, possible hijack," and I'm like, "It is pin quiet in there. Somebody freaking move," because they could have heightened it and put some music that I think watching it now we would criticize way worse had they done that.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, because earlier I talked about how maybe the casting hasn't aged so well, but safe to say the sound design his has aged pretty well. I mean, I think it'll continue to, because of that decision to not use music or not have more of a traditional score. Later in this episode, we'll talk about Air Force One, and that's a movie who, yes, soundtrack is way more sincere than maybe it needs to be, but regardless, that's for the other discussion. Use of sound in United 93, 1 out of 10, Lakeisha. What are you grading it? What are you giving it?
I'm giving it a 9.
Well, that brings us to theme for the final category. Again, I think it's really interesting as a filmmaker, if you're given a task like this, hey, you're making a historical picture. You're not necessarily starting with a theme and blooming a story out of that. You already have the story and you're kind of reverse engineering the theme. I'm curious, Lakeisha, if you had to identify a theme or two that really stood out for you, what would those be, or what would it be?
Watching the one of the hijackers, I don't know if any of it's historically accurate, tell someone that he loved them before he left to go and create, do this horrific thing. And it looks like he might have had a picture or something on the steering column. To me, it was like the vulnerability of humanity. We are all just vulnerable to each other at every possible second of the day. Life is just fleeting. And at the end of the day, everybody just wants the right to live. And I think that's why they fought, because 4 guys with a fake bomb decided to do something. And I think it's just vulnerability to me, and the need and right to live in peace.
It did really seem like this sort of portrait of almost how far people are willing to go to do what they believe in on both sides of the coin, whether it's strapping a fake bomb and orchestrating a plan to be part of a larger group to execute these terrorist attacks, or it's just a group of passengers that realize, hey, we're going to die regardless, so let's just use our last moments on life to do what we feel is right. And I think that's what the movie is really effective at doing. It's really effective at just reminding everybody that every day we have a choice to live life, which is really precious, because at any moment it can go away. And I do agree with a lot of what you said, that this is a tough watch because the movie is so tragic. And I think that's sort of what the theme to me that really stood out was, it's a theme of tragedy, but it's a theme of human choice to
Mhm.
be your best self, or I say be your best self, but even the terrorists, obviously, they believe that. And you mentioned the picture that they put on, yeah, the steering column, the steering wheel of the plane. Any pilots listening, let us know in the comments what you call that if it's not a steering wheel. That's a picture of the Capitol building, which is sort of the understood and probably the intended destination of where they would have landed, which is interesting because January 6th was a really impactful time in America, and that all took place at the Capitol building, which who knows how history would have played out, and what that day would have looked like had September 11th played out differently, and these characters in the movie didn't necessarily, if they didn't do what they ended up doing. So I'm curious, Lakeisha, what would you give the theme 1 out of 10, or themes?
It's just like, okay, theme of, human nature, to me is always a 10, but then if that human nature is to destroy and destruct, I have to deduct like 4 points. So I'm gonna go with I'm gonna go with. I'm gonna be gracious and go with 7. I'll give it a 7.
All right, we're locking in a 7. Well, that gives us a total then, so I can reveal to you and the listeners what Lakeisha Jackson, writer-director, gives United 93. You gave the plot a 6, the characters and performances a 10, the visual storytelling an 8, the use of sound a 9, and the themes a 7. That brings us to a total of 80. Now, here on Real Talk, that could be considered an A. It's right on the edge, so your choice. Would you give it an A, a B minus, an A plus? What's your grade for United 93?
I would give it probably a B minus. Only just because of the subject matter itself. It's not the talent of the director, the writers, the actors, because it was such a sucky experience to have to relive. And, my heart still goes out to all the people affected because, we'll forever be affected by that. So
We got the B minus locked in. It's an 80. Like I said earlier, I reacted to the plot a bit differently than you did. The decision to kind of just put us on the plane and make us one of the passengers, as difficult as it was, I just had to give it high marks because I thought it was a brave choice and I thought it was really effectively done. So I gave it a 10 to your 6. Characters and performances, I gave a 9 to your 10. I only docked it a little bit because, again, I don't know that I'll ever probably reference this movie as a performance I remember. There's not, like you mentioned, there's not a character that you can really anchor to. Still, everybody does a stellar job. I don't mean to take away, but I gave it a 9 out of 10. Visual storytelling, I gave a 9 to your 8, so just a little bit ahead. Use of sound, you and I totally aligned. I gave it a 9 to your 9. And themes, I get a little bit higher than yours. I gave it a 9 to your 7, but not far off. I think that these are just really difficult themes to traverse, but the film does it really, really well. So that's a 92 to your 80. I gave it a solid A. I think there's a lot of lessons for any filmmaker to learn, a lot of technique on display, and of course, as it is such an impactful day in history, I think it's probably just an important movie for everybody to check off their list. Lakeisha, thank you so much for coming today. I'm sorry that it wasn't a more fun film to watch. Will you come back to the jungle some other time? We can watch something a little bit more fun.
yes, most definitely. I would love to do this again. This has been an amazing experience. I am glad I watched it. Happy to be here. This was awesome.
Well, thank you so much for saying that. And I want to let the listeners know we've got it linked in our description, of course, so you can check out. But if you're listening,
head over to cinfury.com where you can see all of Lakeisha's work. You can check out a web series that she did. She's got a great science fiction short that everybody should take a look at. That's cinefuryproductions.com. And Lakeisha, again, thank you so much for coming into the jungle today. We've got to have you back. I can't wait. Until next time. Before we jump into the next review, I just wanted to thank you for listening this far, and I ask that you please give us a follow if you're enjoying the show, as well as comment what movies you'd like to hear us score on Real Talk. We're almost certainly on your favorite social media platform, so search Al the Movie Lion wherever you scroll.
It's 1997, and John McClane is the President of the United States. But this time, Harrison Ford is playing the canned cowboy and goes by the name James Marshall. After making a controversial decision that is sure to scare off potential voters in the next election, we learn that President Marshall made that decision without the consent of his advisors. But once aboard his flying command center, nagging cabinet members are the least of his worries. Gary Oldman's Ivan Kirshenov is in the Hans Gruber role and successfully takes control of Air Force One by posing as the leader of a foreign news crew who are secretly working with a not-so-inconspicuous member of the President's Secret Service team. Like any die-hard plot, the gallery of rogues gets slimmer as we reach the film's end, but somehow circumstances still escalate for the heroes. In perhaps the only attempt the movie makes to deviate from formula, Oldman's deadly duel with Harrison Ford isn't the film's final fight. Instead, the Secret Service member / undercover terrorist reveals himself and delivers a fatal shot to Major Caldwell. Like most of the decisions contained within this high-octane action flick, the final fight inspires thoughts of what could have been instead of delivering a satisfying payoff. I couldn't help but wonder why the Secret Service member didn't help his terrorist buddies when he had the chance, or ask why he was even helping them in the first place. But then again, Air Force One builds its entire first act around a controversial policy that the film never even attempts to explain. I'll wait to reveal my grade until we speak to Syd, So let's hear what he has to say.
Syd, welcome aboard. Please put your seat
Hello.
back in its upright position and it's
Oh, small talk.
yeah, you're looking lovely, as
Thanks,
always.
man.
Um,
As always.
well, first of all, when did you see Air Force One for the first time? Because surely you did not see it for the first time screening it for this show.
Yeah, this is my first. It was no. Yeah, Al, I saw it in the theater. I'm trying to think back to when I first saw it and my reaction as opposed to my reaction now. And it was you know what the thing is? That movie is such a typical 90s movie. It's so 90s.
It's a time
Um
capsule.
yeah. Well, I tell you, I found some of the parachute scenes enjoyable. The in the very beginning, he's parachuting down, with the handgun as he's dropping, bam, nails the guy perfectly. I mean, that's a hell of a shot.
You might say he puts the chute in parachute.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he did. Yeah. Ah, Al, and your puns. So then the people are jumping out of the airplane, and there's the close up of that one woman just like smiling. Sometimes, movies like that I'll like for like a good Saturday afternoon or something to watch, just a good stupid action movie. That one I thought was a little hard to sit through. I gave it a 3 out of 10 because I
Okay.
don't really know exactly what we're supposed to make of the plot. Yeah, okay, they take them and they're trying to get them. I mean, it's kind of straightforward as far as,
Yeah, I mean, it does just kind of play out in a very straightforward way. There's no real twists and turns other than just the immediate kind of tension as things are escalating. What was it missing? There's other Harrison Ford movies, there's other action movies, there's other 90s movies that I would imagine would probably score higher than a 3.
I have to say, and the things that kind of annoy me about movies sometimes, because let's say the plot's a little weak. I expect that a lot of times because of just the whole lowest common denominator,
Sure.
broad appeal, whatever. So like I know movies are gonna be they may not be the best. But if they get little things right, at least it doesn't I can stay in the movie. I mean, these guys are just shooting machine guns all over this plane. You
Yeah,
know what I
no,
mean?
I know,
I'm
they're
just
spraying
I
it
can't
down.
like what are you kidding me? Like I mean the movie should
I,
be just the whole hole blows open and everyone flies out, the movie's over.
Al has a mom, a lioness, who was in town visiting, and she watched this with me, and I made a comment about that.
She's purdy.
Oh, Syd, please. She was in town. We watched the movie. I made a comment about that, and she very sincerely looked at me. She said, "It's Air Force One. The plane is bulletproof."
Oh.
Like, as if that was the only issue.
Yeah.
It's just spraying machine guns
Right,
wildly
right.
down the barrel of an airplane hull,
Oh,
Oh,
I know.
because that was the only
That's
issue
funny.
I was pointing out that there logistically there might be some issues with that. But yeah,
Yeah. I like movies that take place in one room. But here we have it just on the plane, and so it's kind of a big international movie, but it just seems like
do you
I
feel
don't
like,
know.
because for me again, I felt like this
Yeah.
thing really could have benefited from just having, I don't know, some actual level of politics injected into it. It's terrorists, it's a president.
Yeah.
Again, the movie opens with him sort of making this controversial decision, or at least taking a stance that his team didn't know about, that he feels like is going to go against vote. The Bourne movies, those do seem to have a more sincere connection to politics and just real life affairs that makes it feel more real, where this is just kind of feels like a cartoon the whole time.
America's good. These guys are bad. Other than the Secret Service guy who's a traitor, which there's no mystery there for us on that. Then nothing new comes out about anybody. We're like, oh, I don't know. And Gary Oldman, I love Gary Oldman. He's a goddamn chameleon, right? I mean, he's Beethoven. He Commissioner Gordon, Drexel,
Yeah.
right? But this character, I'm like, oh, it's just so damn. I just was not impressed. I guess didn't do anything that was like, yeah, Gary Oldman's killing it.
Well, we'll transition into characters and performances now. You mentioned Gary Oldman. This has an incredible cast. I mean, there's a
Yes.
lot of really heavy hitters in this. They kind of take different approaches to it. Gary Oldman is definitely I don't know, leaning fully in. Harrison Ford is just giving a very Ford
Hmm.
performance. I feel like Glenn Close is, really kind of giving it her all, maybe taking it a little bit more seriously than other people are. But we've got a
Yeah.
William H. Macy in here, that
Yeah.
overall, I don't know, what are your thoughts on the characters and performances in the movie?
First, let me just say, I love in my notes I have Bookman shows up, which is, Philip Baker Hall. I
Yeah.
love Philip Baker Hall. Just seeing him come in, I mean, the guy just is in the scene for a minute, and I just love watching him. He's
So
great.
extra points for the Philip Baker Hall cameo.
Yeah, yeah.
Copy that.
Characters and performance, I gave a 5 out of 10, and that's kind of because I didn't think anything was great. I
Sure.
didn't think anything was horrible. I love the idea of Glenn Close as the vice president. I'm like, oh yeah, Glenn Close. I forgot she was in this. But like you said, I mean, she was taking it too a little more serious, but almost too serious at some point. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know. Like,
I think she thought maybe she was in an episode of The West Wing, which I know doesn't
yeah,
track in terms of when that would have been out versus when this movie is out, maybe. But
sure.
there's a
Yeah,
little bit of an identity crisis in that
yeah.
way, where there's kind of characters that feel like they're plucked from different movies. I think that kind of maybe goes back to the direction a bit more than anything, and an ability to.
Right. Yeah, I don't necessarily think that anyone's like, oh, they did a bad acting job.
Well,
But
I know this is the first episode, but I also have it on good authority that Glenn Close does listen to the podcast. So I'm glad that you clarified that.
oh
I
yeah,
wouldn't want
yeah,
her to
yeah,
think
yeah.
that you were taking a shot.
One of the guys on the plane, right?
Mhm.
In the beginning, president gets on the Air Force One. He's all ready to watch the game. Asshole ruins the score for him. Tells him who won. Okay, right off
Completely
the bat.
unnecessary.
It's like, not cool at all. Like, why would you do that, right? Just
Yeah.
come on, just say, "Did you see the game, sir?"
Uh,
So that guy, I don't know if he died. I hope he got at least shot.
Well, at the very least, the president survived. So I'm sure once he got back on the ground, he took care of that guy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He fired him, right?
Air Force One 2 is all about that guy getting fired.
Yeah.
Next up, we've got visual storytelling.
Well, it was visual storytelling. It's all right in the sense that, in that simple way of like just like a visual plot, it's fine.
Sure.
As far as like, then using images to not just as a map, but and even that, like, like it wasn't the worst. It's definitely, I think, probably my highest rating is the visual storytelling, because yeah, you know what, and actually for the times too, some of the plane scenes, those are actually pretty good for the time period. And they did the whole thing at the end, right? Typical "get off my plane," right? I don't know. People, I think, probably cheered in the theater when they said that. I don't remember.
Sure.
Like, now it's kind of an eye roll. I'm okay with the whole pulling the sheet, right? He goes flying out. But I love that they break his neck first. Okay. Breaks his neck. I was just a little, like, being a little picky, but just like, that kind of annoyed me. I don't know why. But then they showed him floating down with his neck broken. That made it all okay for
It
me.
won you back.
That shot was great, dude. Yeah. He just heads over to the side, tongue hanging out, just floating down. Oh, yeah. I don't know. Honestly, I gave it a 6 out of 10 for visual storytelling.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, this is director of photography, Michael Balahas, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Legendary director of photography. He did a little movie called Goodfellas. You might be familiar with Dracula. I mean, a huge
Yeah,
resume of film. So yeah, I mean, the movie looks great. I mean, technically, it's
sure.
down. There are a lot of. It is a special effects movie in many ways because obviously they're not really flying around and breaking Gary Oldman's neck and things like that. So the visual storytelling got high points from me, and it's sort of one of the standouts. The next category then is use of sound, sort of very similar to the
Hmm.
visual storytelling and the cinematography and the edit. The use of sound in this movie it's technically very sound. But I guess I'll start out by saying before we get to the music specifically from a sound design standpoint, what were your thoughts on it, Sid? Did you feel like you were in the plane? Was
No, that's
Yeah,
my problem. Is like, I love a plane movie, a train movie, but the whole thing is, you got to hear the sound, man. You got to always hear the sound of the train going. That's what makes
sure,
it great. It's like, it's very quiet, it's
right.
smooth. You could be on the ground in a building, which I'm sure they are, right? So,
But no, you're right.
yeah,
There's no real difference. Like when they go back to the White House,
yeah, there's
it
no,
doesn't
yeah,
really feel different from when they're on the plane
right,
from a sound design perspective, other than maybe
yeah,
there's just more phone ringings and things that
right.
on the
You,
ground.
you know, I went out into the other room, and my dad was out there watching him Hateful Eight.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, and I just thought, though, just like, as I'm doing something in the kitchen, I'm listening to it. And I'm like, yeah, man, the sound is great. You hear the storm outside the entire time, you know. You never forget that you're in this cabin in the snowstorm. And I was thinking about the plane in that movie, and I'm just like, yeah, I didn't care for it though.
Well, I love that there's a whole family of cinema sloths just constantly watching movies in the tree. That's very
Yeah, yeah. And
uh,
that's what I mean by kitchen. It's a branch we have that's got like a bunch of different leaves on it. We call it the pantry.
brilliant, brilliant.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's pantry.
Well, in addition, obviously, we talked about the sound design. Like you said, it wasn't really as immersive. You didn't necessarily feel like you were on the plane. What about the use of music in this? It's an action movie. It's designed around
Yeah.
tension. I
I
mean,
mean,
I feel like the
yeah,
music does help aid the tension and build things like that. I mean, it is well scored, albeit it's not as memorable as, some other scores or
sure.
films. That was probably aided by the fact that the film isn't that memorable.
Like you said, the music did help the scenes definitely, you know, and gave it, you know, yeah, they gave it definitely some energy because there's definitely a few scenes where I'm just like, you know, you just kind of just get into it, you know, you're watching it and all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, man, this is actually a good scene right there, you know. And my problem with the music is like I feel like you could just replace it with any other 90s score music. Some movies have great soundtracks like Rushmore, right? And then you've got movies that I don't know, like you said, okay, it does its job, yeah, as a an action movie, but it's not the most memorable score.
Well, I was just saying, I think there's a fun opportunity too when you're hanging out with the president in his downtime in his quarters. What is he listening to? What did he? This is 1997. This is the same year Jackie Brown came out, a movie with a phenomenal
Right.
soundtrack.
Yeah.
Not that you're going to have a Tarantino style soundtrack in
Sure.
a movie like this, but I do think there are some lost opportunities for maybe just a track or two that is just centered around like what is President Marshall listen to in his downtime.
Right. Right.
How fun would it be to see him gunning down some terrorists just to one of his favorite tracks that comes on in the radio in Air
Yeah.
Force.
Yeah.
But there's
Exactly.
really
That's pretty. Yeah.
no attempts to be inventive. It's such a straightforward kind of formulaic movie. So that being said, use
Yeah.
of sound. What would you give it?
I gave use of sound a 3 out of 10.
3 out of 10. Sid is one tough sloth. I'm not gonna lie.
Here's the thing. It's like sometimes I feel like, oh, is that too low? But then I just start thinking of, you know, what movies are ranking up higher, and there's so many more that I can, you know, that I'm like, no, that movie's a 5, you know, or that's and then I just can't go back. I keep going back to the I'm just not a fan of not hearing that plane sound, not that.
I think that's fair. My system, the way I do it is I think every movie starts as a 5. To me, that's neutral. And
Sure.
if something starts to be a negative and pull me back, that's gonna drop it down. If things are a positive, that's gonna push it up. I try not to compare movies to other movies.
No, no, I know that we've discussed this other times too about comparing movies to other movies or not. But I feel like there's so many times that other movies are using things from other movies. How can you
Sure,
not?
sure.
It's like yeah, well they obviously saw that movie, so you
Right.
know, I'm gonna compare it to it.
And look,
Yeah.
even in the context of this show, we talk about 3 movies in the body of a show, and it's hard not to. I mean, this episode it's a little easier. Air Force One is it would be difficult to compare it to a United 93 or an
Yeah.
airplane, but
Not
some
as
of our
funny as United 93 was, right?
yeah,
Oh,
United
yeah.
93
Yeah.
really
It was a
does
it
stand the
was
test
a
of time.
summer comedy, wasn't it?
Classic, classic. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Now we're on our final category of theme. Once you give this one a score, we're gonna lock it in. While then I'll reveal my score for Air Force One. This movie, um, not exactly overflowing with themes, not exactly a thoughtful picture, like I said in the beginning, almost goes out of its way to not take a political stance on anything. I mean, President Marshall's tie might as well be purple. It just,
Yeah. Yeah.
he, it's, anyway, I digress. When it comes to themes, Sid, I don't know. I'm going to put you on the spot. If you had to identify a theme that this movie contains, could you even do it?
Pro America. That's what it's one of those movies, you know.
Yippee ki
That's
absolutely.
the theme is America is the powerful country. That's really it. It's like it's that straightforward. I feel like.
I wouldn't call it a west. It's not quite a western. I mean, it's sort of a showdown movie. There's another world where this is
Hmm.
sort of the mayor of a town who's on a stagecoach that gets, or a train or something, that gets taken over. I feel like this movie does try to traverse some themes of just kind of the reckless rebel and doesn't need anything more than intuition to kind of fight the good fight.
That's the thing too. It's kind of like I'm right because I think I'm right.
Conviction for the sake of conviction.
God, yeah, it's just like we're God. I'm God's chosen one. Like you said, yeah, conviction for conviction's sake. Is that
Yeah,
what you said?
I did. I did say
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
In the opposite order, but yeah, I did say that.
Oh,
I don't know. I don't want to pick on this movie because I know that it has a soft spot in a lot of people's hearts. I know in today's times, there are probably a lot of people that watch a movie like this and really align with some of the themes that we just identified. This idea of just
yeah.
rah rah go us, and
Right.
and to me, if I'm being transparent, yeah, it did not resonate with me in that way. I felt like it felt kind of silly. Dare I say, it felt a little dumb. If it had the courage to just take a stance and define these characters in any way, I mean, it almost felt like reality TV. They're in this circumstance. You don't really need to know why there's drama, but there's just drama, and you're just meant to watch it. Things kind of peak in this cartoonish way, but a lot of the movie takes itself a little too seriously to ever truly be funny. This was well before the days where every action movie there's more jokes than there are punches. This
Yeah.
this is a very earnest attempt, I think, to deliver what at the time a lot of people thought was what a political thriller should deliver. I'm curious, Sid, what did you give the theme? 1 out of 10.
I gave it a 3 out of 10.
A 3 out of 10. Sid?
Yeah. My grading system with movies, like when I look at a movie, I look at it as a 1 to 5. Okay, it's one is no good, two is okay, three is good,
Acceptable.
good, three is good.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I mean, it's good. Is it great? No, it's good.
Okay.
Right? Four is very good, and five's excellent.
Right.
So the middle's good because that's what I want most movies to be. Okay, I figure you need to at least be good, to be worth anything. So then there's okay, which is okay is exactly what it said. Yeah, it's okay. I've seen movies that were terrible that I hate that are ones, and this definitely wasn't a good movie, right? But it was an okay movie. Or I'm saying whatever movie I'm talking about. So what I find I do is I just do that, and then I just double the number to get my score for 10.
I try to
Yeah.
present a versatile rubric. I'm going to run it back and tell you, Sid, you gave the plot a 3, you gave the characters and performances a 5, you gave the visual storytelling a 6, indeed your highest category. You gave the use of sound a 3 and the theme a 3. That brings us to a total of 40 out of 100. So I'm curious, how does that translate on your scale? Would that be a 2, a 3?
Well, I gave it as a grade, I would give it like a D plus.
Okay.
But on my scale, it's a 2. It's an okay movie. At 2 out of 5, 4 out of 10, 40%. So
I'm going to tell you now what my score was. To your 3, I gave the plot a 3.5. So half a
okay.
point more. For characters and performances, you gave it a 5, I gave it a 6. So I was a little more kind. Visual storytelling, to your 6, I gave it a 6.5. Sid, we're tracking. We're pretty.
Yeah.
The biggest discrepancy comes from the use of sound. You
Mm.
gave the movie a 3. I gave it an 8.
Oh
And I'll
wow.
take a
Yeah.
second to defend it because I do feel like this film is very technically sound. Like I said, I feel like the score does what a score is supposed to do. It enhances the tension, it enhances the emotion. Like I said, it's not super memorable, but I do think the use of sound is far and away from me the high points in the movie. I gave it an 8. And then for theme, to your 3, I gave it a 4. So for me, that's a 58. I'm sorry,
Mm.
56. A 56 to your 40. On our scale here, we kind of go in chunks of 20. So I gave it a C. I feel like this movie is well intentioned. It's a product of the time. Someday you and I will get into some other movies, Sid, that maybe are a little more smug, have a bit of a different intention. I do feel like this movie was well intentioned and made by good filmmakers. Wolfgang Peterson was the director of this. He's made some other movies like In the Line of Fire, The Perfect Storm, Troy, maybe not the most well remembered or well loved movie of all time. Leave us a comment. Let us know how much you like Troy. Otherwise, Sid, I really am glad that you came on. If you were running for president, I would vote for you, regardless of your policy. I just want you to know that that's the kind of friend I am. Will you come back? Will you come back to the jungle and review another picture with me?
I absolutely will.
Amazing.
Yes. Yes.
Well, until next
It may
time.
take me a while to crawl over here, but I will get here.
Well, hey, Sid, until next time, hang in there, pal.
Thank you for flying with us today, and here's a look at the scoreboard from our show. Justin Tyler scored Airplane a 74.24 to my 85. He gave it an A, I gave it a B-, which gives us an average of 79.62 and a B+. Lakeisha Jackson scored United 93 an 80 to my 92. She gave it a B-, I gave it an A. That's an 86 average for an A. Syd the Cinema Sloth scored Air Force One a 40 to my 56. He gave it a D+, I gave it a C, so we scored it a C- with an average of 48. Follow Characters Welcome on YouTube to see the hilarious Justin Tyler's work. Check out CineFuryProductions.com for the work of writer-director Lakeisha Jackson, and support Syd by purchasing his designs, available on more than 25 items in our merch shop. Join me next time when we'll be looking at Prisoners with therapist Ahmad Butt, Sicario with director of photography Jeremy McDaniel, and Arrival with Jimmy the Toucan as we celebrate the early works of Denis Villeneuve. Thanks to the production team at Real Digital for producing this episode, and Platinum Plastic, who supply all our show's merchandise on Redbubble.com. If you haven't left a like by now, it's absolutely time, and you might as well subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified when Real Talk drops twice a week. Thanks again for listening, and if you're gonna talk movies, make sure it's Real Talk.
And don't call me Shirley.